Survive in the crowd. Thrive on the edge. All right, folks, welcome back to The Edge. I'm going to be real with you right now. I've been down the rabbit hole like a lot of guys my age. I've tried supplements. I've messed with fasting. I've done the cold plunges at 6 in the morning when every part of my body is screaming at me to get the hell out of that ice tub. Some of it works. Some of it, total garbage. But here's the thing. Testing limits has always been my life. In my 20s, I was a pro baseball player, drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates, where no pill or powder could fake the sweat and the grind you need to put in day after day. On Wall Street, the trading pits, pure chaos, where stress wasn't a theory, it was survival. Then it was cable news, the anchor desk, millions upon millions of people, eyes watching live, where every word had to land sharp and under fire, by the way, and if you screw it up, you're bounced. 3 arenas, 3 crucibles, all teaching me one truth. Shortcuts collapse under pressure. And right now, men are being bombarded with shortcuts, hacks, life hacks, health hacks, promises of quick fixes. Huberman says boost testosterone naturally. Nail your sleep. Get a lot of sunlight. Peter Adia says weight loss drugs like Ozempic can work, but only if you train the right way. Joe Rogan swears the carnivore diet changed his life. RP Strength says, don't waste time in the gym, train smarter, not longer. It's a fire hose of advice being blasted on us from every part of the internet, everywhere. But what's real and what is just noise designed to get clicks? That's why I brought my doctor in today, a great doc, not to nod along in agreement, but to cut through all the BS, clip by clip. We're going to show you clips of Rogan, Huberman, Adia, and others. Claim by claim. What should men be actually doing if we want to look better, feel better, and keep going? Keep that edge into our 40s, into our 50s, and beyond. We'll hit it all. Testosterone, weight loss drugs, muscle after 40, the carnivore diet, and yeah, cold plunges too. I've done them. I'll be honest, the high is addictive, but does it make you sharper, stronger, and leaner? Or is it just bragging rights in a bucket of ice? This isn't about playing it safe. It's about stripping away the hype, calling out the BS, and getting real answers men can actually use. That is The Edge. Let's get into it. All right, let's bring in the doctor. The doctor is in the house, folks. This is Dr. Todd Dorfman. He is the CEO and founder of Sedelian Health, and I will be in full disclosure here. He is also my personal doctor, a great concierge doctor. Dr. Dorfman, Dr. Todd, if I may, let's jump right into this. Ben is going to roll us a few sound bites of some popular podcasts that have been talking about what are the myths and what are the realities of some of the most popular new supplements and let's call them health hacks that men are using right now, including me. So let's do it right now. Ben, just roll the first sound bite.
One of the main behaviors that's been shown to be associated with poor levels of estrogen for people with ovaries or lower levels of testosterone for people with testes is apnea. People who are dramatically overweight also suffer a lot from apnea during sleep. And it's well established that going into deep sleep and getting the proper patterns of slow wave sleep and REM sleep are important for hormone optimization.
Okay, so Doc, I brought this soundbite up. First of all, Huberman Labs, very, very popular men's health podcast, brings in doctors. He's a doctor himself. Testosterone, let's talk about testosterone replacement therapy, which I'm on. Let's talk about the myths, what the proper way to administer it, and then sleep, how sleep affects natural testosterone creation in the body. The floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are many studies that show that men, especially middle-aged men, as they age more healthfully, if you will, with more normalized testosterone levels. It improves sense of well-being. It improves people's emotional well-being. It improves levels of fitness, decreased percent body fat, increased percent muscle mass. And there don't appear to be any significant risks. We certainly worry about making people's blood too thick, and we measure blood levels because of that. There's some older school thoughts about prostate cancer when you use testosterone. That's been disproven. Certainly, if you have a genetic risk for prostate cancer and you have a prostate cancer, it may fuel that cancer, but it does not cause cancer. And in general, men do better when they have more normalized testosterone. And when you're looking at a total disease preventative package for a patient, testosterone replacement is certainly something that you should consider.
How do you dictate how much? How do you find how much? And at what age is it? Do you have to replace more with the injectables as you get older? Tell us about that process too. And how would you know? Just simply blood test? Are there any other indicators if I'm replacing my testosterone? Full disclosure, folks, I'm on testosterone replacement therapy with Dr. Todd here, and I wouldn't know if I got too much or too little. How do I know?
Well, because I check your blood levels, Eric. So basically, we established two things before we would start you on testosterone, of course. The first thing is, do you have a clinical need? In other words, are you feeling symptoms of low testosterone? Do you have libido issues? Are you putting on a percent body fat when you're working out really hard? Do you have depression to some extent? Are you at the gym, but you feel so beat after each exercise or after each routine that you can't go back the next day or even 2 or 3 days later? Those are all signs of testosterone deficiency in men. Women also have produced testosterone, believe it or not, and there are similar signs of testosterone deficiency in women. And once you have a clinical picture, you correlate that with the blood level. So we draw blood, we look at the free and total testosterone, and we make a general decision if the patient does not have any contraindications based on their medical history or other medicines they're on. We talk about the risks and the benefits, and we choose a dose. And usually that dose is sort of more of an educated guess. And then about 3 months out, we check another set of blood levels in order to ascertain whether the dose is too high, too little, or just right. And we correlate with that with how the patient is feeling. And that's really how it works in both men and women.
At one point, I remember calling you, Doc, and saying, I read something about if we don't get this right, the amount that you could develop man boobs, like breasts on men. Is that right? How is that? How has that happened?
Yeah, well, no, it is actually true. So there are a couple side pathways, if you will, or alternative pathways for testosterone. One of those pathways is that it can be converted to estrogen. And estrogen, if a man is supplementing with exogenous or external testosterone, and they are good converters to estrogen, then their estrogen levels can go up and they can actually get some nipple tenderness, some irritated nipples, and some other signs of high estrogen. The same thing can happen with DHT, dihydrotestosterone, and that really is known to cause male pattern baldness and enlarged prostate, most importantly. So we measure those things. When I'm measuring the testosterone levels, we are measuring the side pathways also to make sure that you're in the proper range and we're keeping everything safe.
Got it. Okay. Any myths surrounding testosterone that you want to debunk now?
Well, I think, the biggest myth was, and there was even a black box warning on it, a couple years ago about, causing the risk of causing prostate cancer. And that has been disproven. In fact, there was a big article in the New England Journal of Medicine called the Traverse Study, which totally took a number of other studies and totally disproved that. So I think at this point, the key is, make sure that you're measuring blood levels. You're not just doing it haphazardly. Make sure you're measuring the side pathways, if you will, to make sure that you're not getting any increase in estrogen or dihydrotestosterone. And then check in clinically with the patient and make sure they're feeling okay and they're not getting too many red blood cells. So it's something that has to be managed carefully, but I think once managed carefully, it can be very beneficial.
And final question, I love it. It's been great. Feel great on it. do I have to be on it the rest of my life?
Potentially. They're really, once you get, in your sort of 50s and 60s, your testes don't tend to produce much testosterone on their own. And you had asked a question earlier about, what age can you expect it? It's really all over the place. And there's even a type of low testosterone called secondary hypogonadism. And that really is that the pituitary gland in the brain doesn't talk to the testes. So that's replaced one particular way. Primary hypogonadism is more what people in your age group have. And if you want to feel like you do, yes, you will have to be on it the rest of your life. And we will continue to, check the labs and make sure you're doing it safely.
Interesting. All right, Ben, let's roll another soundbite.
EPC 157, while only animal data, it's very clear, it has the propensity to encourage fibroblasts, which are these cells that, make up things like tendon and cartilage, et cetera, and can really repair tissues. For a while, it was like peptides. Oh, it sounds really kind of gray market weird, and it can be. But let's face it, GLP-1 agonists, Ozempic, Mounjaro,
Peptides.
that's a peptide that existed for years in the fitness and bodybuilding industry. Now it's probably approaching $1 trillion industry someday.
Is that has a tremendous windfall in terms of the amount of money you can generate from it. BPC 157 can be made by virtually any laboratory, and it's probably going to cut back on orthopedic surgeries.
All right, so that's the Rogan podcast, and that was Dr. Huberman on Rogan. Talking about peptides, Dr. Todd Dorfman. Peptides. Talk to us about peptides. And I think Huberman touched on something where it has been kind of in the dark alleys and corners of the world. Why is that? Are they legal? Are they good? Is it worth supplementing my testosterone with peptides?
Yeah, well, they're all over, the internet, and I get questions about peptides, weekly. And the bottom line is this. First, let's understand, a peptide is basically an amino acid chain, and it's a chain of amino acids that forms this peptide that usually does something in the body. So Dr. Huberman alluded to the GLP-1 agonists like semaglutide and tirzepatide. And yes, those are peptides. So is something like sermorelin, which we use for human growth hormone. I think the difference is which peptides are you talking about? So in that particular segment, they were talking about BPC 157, which is kind of used for tissue repair to heal muscle, tendons, ligaments. And there are a number of papers that support its use. The problem is that it's not approved by the FDA. So while some peptides are approved by the FDA, there's one called PT141, the GLP-1 agonist, as I mentioned, that's because they have rigorous studies and rigorous safety data associated with them. So a peptide like BPC157, just because it's a peptide and just because a GLP-1 agonist is also a peptide, doesn't mean that BPC 157 is approved, and in fact, it's not. So it's not really legal to prescribe it. To be honest, it's not legal for someone like me to prescribe it. Then, in terms of why is that? Well, part of it, I think Dr. Huberman's correct. It may just be that the FDA is a bit behind, and what is now considered unsafe will be considered safe in a few years. That's totally possible. Maybe it's what Joe Rogan said: no one can make money off of it. But I think the bottom line is, there's also some theoretical concerns, like the mechanism by which BPC 157 heals muscles and tendons is by a process called angiogenesis, which is basically to create new blood vessels. Well, who knows that, tumors wouldn't like those new blood vessels, or it might increase the risk of a cancer or something. And we just don't have that level of data to say whether or not it's safe. So while there are theoretic benefits and potentially in the future, they may be great for you to add to your routine. I'm currently not prescribing those because of the FDA issue, number one, and number two, because there's really not enough safety data.
Doc, Huberman mentioned, and maybe Rogan followed up on it, that some of these peptides can actually regrowth cartilage. Is that possible? I mean, for people who play professional sports, professional baseball. I went to an orthopedist for my shoulder. He said, you are bone on bone. You can never do anything besides a shoulder replacement to fix what you got going on in your shoulder. Is there possibility of something to come and grow the cartilage into giving me a buffer again? I'm bone on bone in a joint?
Sure. I mean, is there a possibility? I think absolutely. And one of the things that, is sort of an analogous kind of thing is stem cell, therapy for arthritic joints. Currently, there is no known process that can regrow cartilage that is available to people like you. Certainly no FDA-approved process. I'm sure you could go offshore somewhere and get, stem cells or some of these other treatments, or maybe even you can in the U.S. But the bottom line is there's no, there's no one using these in the mainstream.
So am I reading you right, hearing you correctly saying they'll probably work, you just can't legally get them?
Well, no, I'm actually saying you can't legally get them, and they may or may not work. We really don't have data in humans that they really do anything. And they've been using, way back, I remember Kobe Bryant going to Germany, years and years ago to get something with his knee and to try and prolong his career and all these things. Well, we've been saying the same thing since back then. Well, yeah, we hope that it works someday, but really there's nothing that really, really works at this point.
Okay. All right. So FDA gets up to speed on approving more peptides besides the GLP peptides, and then maybe we start looking into that. Got it. All right, Ben, how about another one?
So what are some of the benefits you'll get from just stepping into a cold stream of water for 30 seconds to a minute and working your way up to 3 minutes? Number one, you're going to have a vasospasm. Your arteries are actually going to spasm down. They're going to clamp all the blood out of your extremity and try to force it into the core and also up to the brain. This is actually exercising your vascular system. You're also going to get an endorphin rush, a nice flood of dopamine, which is proven to last several hours longer than using other methods of enhancing dopamine. Your liver is going to release something called a cold shock protein, and they've been known to even increase the rate of protein synthesis, which is muscle repair.
All right, I wanted to bring this up because I started this cold plunge therapy. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you, when you first start it is shocking. Your body goes into some sort of, get me out of here, what are you doing to me? So you spend 30 minutes in a infrared sauna, and then you jump into, and I was jumping into 40 degrees. I stayed in there 5 minutes, and I kept doing it. I have friends who say they get an absolute endorphin high from it. I never got any of that. I'm not sure if I was doing it wrong, but I stayed 5 minutes, and I did twice a week, got to the 11-minute recommendation. Tell us about cold plunge therapy, benefits, myths, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, this is another topic that's sort of all over the internet, and where I am in Boulder, Colorado, it's a big deal in terms of sports and recovery from exercise and being used in a number of different athletes. If you really delve into the medical literature on cold plunge, the first thing that happens is you get what's called a sympathetic nervous system response, like a huge response. And that's just what you would expect if you jumped into a freezing cold lake or something. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you start secreting, adrenaline, epinephrine, and norepinephrine, noradrenaline, and cortisol. And basically you get all these sort of changes. And those are sort of the short-term effects. What people are looking for is really what are the longer term effects, because those things are over when you get out and you warm up or you do whatever you do. The longer term effects, and there is some data actually that would state that, on a regular sort of routine, you can have some modest cardiovascular benefits, so lower heart rate, lower blood pressure, some modest metabolic benefits, where you're not storing as much fat and your metabolism is higher, certainly at least for the period of time that you're in the cold plunge. Whether or not it lasts very long after is not clear. And you definitely get some long-term immune benefits from it. In other words, your immune system has been shown to be more robust in terms of evidence-based trials. Now, these are kind of limited trials. They're not like the best scientific evidence on the planet, but it certainly doesn't appear to hurt people. With the caveat that, if you have high blood pressure already, or you have heart disease already, or you have, vascular disease in your legs, or you're prone to getting cold problems. There are certain diseases that people, their blood vessels constrict when they get cold. So basically, you want to make sure you don't have any of those problems. You want to talk to your doctor. But other than that, it appears to be very safe for people to use it. And there's probably some long-term benefit. It may not be because, your vessels constrict and it's flushing the blood out of your vessels and whatever that gentleman was saying. I'm not sure that has been shown to be true, but it has been shown to be true that there may be some long-term benefit.
What about this, the brown fat? I've been told the cold plunge has your liver release, I believe it's your liver, brown fat, and that's attacks free radicals. Well, tell us about it.
Yeah, so really what you're saying is, and this has been shown to be true in some of the papers, this cold plunge sort of increases your energy expenditure by activating the brown adipose tissue or the brown fat. And that brown fat, by increasing that, it really improves metabolic health. It reduces your cardiovascular risk over time, and it probably makes you more tolerant, I should say decreases your glucose tolerance, increases your insulin sensitivity, so makes you less likely to be sort of in a pre-diabetic state. So there are some papers that talk about induction of brown fat energy or increase in brown fat when you do these cold plunges. That is true. The immune effect is interesting, Eric, because if you look at the immune effect initially, it actually makes your immune system much worse for the first 10 or 12 hours. And then it causes a boost in the immune system. So potentially, if you were exposed to someone with, the flu or COVID or something while you were in the cold plunge, well, who knows? You might be more at risk of getting ill. If you were exposed to them 12 or 14 hours later, you would potentially be less at risk of getting ill.
Does it the infrared sauna prior, is that any health benefits there? Or does it just make it easier to jump into the cold plunge?
Yeah, it doesn't appear. The infrared sauna has less literature, certainly, than these sort of what we call hydro or water therapies. There are actually even some very reasonable studies. Like in the Japanese tradition, they use the onsens, the hot baths and things. And if you look at studies out of Japan, people who regularly do that do have lower blood pressure and lower heart rate. So it appears to be something associated with water, potentially. Less so rigorous studies for the infrared saunas.
Got it. All right, Ben, let's do another one.
Okay.
Do you have any concerns with long-term safety of the GLP-1s in this current generation?
When you lose 20 or 30% of your body weight, you lose muscle mass, okay? And their lean body mass came down quite significantly. In this study, they measured absolute strength. You can do grip strength or leg strength. And absolute strength went down a little bit, okay? Maybe 25%.
All right, so I want to bring this up because the GLP drugs are just so popular right now. Yeah. A lot of friends on them, and I think it's saving tons of lives. Doc, tell us the pros and the cons of losing weight this way and at this rate.
Yeah. Well, so, right out of the blocks, I'm a huge fan of the GLP-1 agonists and the SGLT2 antagonists, and I think you're right. They are saving lives. I mean, they're decreasing obesity, they're decreasing pre-diabetes, and therefore decreasing the risk of becoming diabetic, decreasing the risk of vascular and kidney disease. I have a couple younger patients, like college age people on them, and it's literally sort of changed their life. So I'm a big believer. Now, in terms of long-term side effects, this gentleman is correct, but I also think that's a short-term side effect. In other words, I don't put anyone on them without the discussion that they need to start doing resistance training. They need to start lifting weights. And I think you really mitigate that side effect that he's mentioning, which is, losing lean muscle mass. Lean muscle mass, it's the ratio. Remember, Eric, it's the ratio of lean muscle mass to percent body fat that's so important. We don't want to shrivel you up into a raisin where you have no muscle and no, body fat.
That's what's happening to older folks, though, right? So
Yeah.
I have friends in their 50s, whatever, and they lose 30, 40 pounds plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And suddenly they look like they need a whole body facelift. They need skin cut off from their arms, their legs, or certainly their faces. There's names like Ozempic face, Ozempic butt, things like that. Is there any way would you take less and lose the weight over a longer period of time so you don't have that, or what's the answer? What's the secret sauce there, Doc?
Well, there's not a great answer to some of that, because what you're talking about really is subcutaneous fat. So what you're really talking about is a situation where Ozempic or tirzepatide or one of the GLP-1 agonists makes you lose fat, and some of that fat is the fat underneath your skin, which is supporting your skin structure, of course. And yeah, there's for sure people that need kind of some cosmetic procedures or to help with that. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think what this guy was describing on the podcast is, if you lose a bunch of muscle mass, we know that muscle mass is really important as you age. And we know that lean muscle mass is really important as you age. So I really encourage people, whether you're on these medicines or not, you should be in the gym doing resistance training. But that's really all you can do. Well, there are safe ways to lose the weight. You don't want to lose it all in the first month. We try and stretch it out over time. Those things might help a little. But look, if you really have a lot of weight to lose, you're going to lose some under the skin and you're going to look more wrinkled.
All right, so how do you lose that much weight that fast? I mean, I was listening to those podcasts, and most of them doctors were saying, well, it tones down your desire to eat. It takes it makes you feel satiated quicker. It's got to be more than that, though, Doc. How can you lose 30, 40, and 50 pounds and 50 plus pounds inside 6 months without having some sort of chemical reaction happening along with you're just eating less?
Yeah, well, there is a chemical reaction happening actually, and without getting into the weeds, it really has to do with how your body is handling insulin and glucose. So you're storing less, you're eating less. Yes, it makes you feel more satiated. You're storing less glucose as fat. Your body's utilizing it differently, basically. So it does really affect other things in your body besides your appetite. And yeah, the only things I see in patients who have 40 or 50 pounds to lose and have lost their weight is their numbers just improve tremendously. I mean, their pre-diabetes numbers, their metabolic health, their cardiovascular health. I mean, frankly, it improves significantly.
What about the folks that say, well, GLP drugs haven't been around long enough, and 20 years from now, we're going to find out they cause cancer?
Well, I guess, anything. You could say that about anything. I think there's really rigorous trials that have been done. Some of the longest trials that are still in the works have been about 5 years or so off the top of my head. Yeah, I think it's true for anything. Maybe in 10 years we'll find out something different, but clearly there's no big safety signals because the drugs just keep getting approved for more and more things. In fact, one of them was just approved for sleep apnea. Early on in the segment, we talked about sleep apnea and hormones a little bit, and we didn't get to the sleep part very much, but the long and the short of it is, sleep apnea is a big deal, and it does affect how you produce hormones, and it affects how you feel, and it increases your risk of heart attacks and strokes and cognitive decline and dementia. So yeah, approving a drug like this for obesity-related sleep apnea, I mean, you can imagine that it really has a positive effect on people's health. So I think there's far more positive than negative in some of in some of the cosmetic aspects of the drug.
Now, just for a guy like me, you put me on testosterone replacement therapy. It was great. I lost weight, got me to the gym, which, by the way, we didn't really talk about in the testosterone segment, but things really started to get better. And you said it. You said, get to the gym, Eric. I was like, I walk 7-8 miles a day. You said, but get to the gym, because and it really was an aha moment, because combining the testosterone with the gym really got me to lose weight, and the lean muscle mass versus the fat that I have, and I still have some, was working. It was going in the right direction. Talk to us a little bit about whether or not that should I incorporate GLP drugs if I want to lose 5 or 10 more pounds? And by the way, I dropped 25 in about 8-10 months or so.
Right. With a lot of work on your behalf, lifestyle changes and food changes, nutrition changes, and exercise changes. Yeah, I can't stress enough the importance of resistance training. So I think if you ask me out of the box, okay, what's the most important thing you can do exercise-wise? I would tell you resistance training, right? Without even hesitating, because and I make this analogy to people, if you're sitting there speaking to me and your twin, identical twin, who did everything exactly the same their entire life, they had the same drop of food, the same amount of exercise, the same everything. The only difference is you go to the gym and lift weights 3 times a week or something, and they don't. You are burning more calories just sitting here talking to me. Your metabolism is higher. Lean muscle mass really makes a difference in terms of healthy aging. Then you get into the whole balance and strength, and the reason that people end up in hospitals when they're elderly from falling and breaking hips and hitting their head and breaking their shoulder and all these things, we prevent those sorts of illnesses too. So I think that without a doubt, physical exercise has been the key to your success. It works synergistically with the testosterone, right? Because the testosterone really can affect your kind of emotional processing. It can affect your subjective goals.
It's amazing. In one of those Huberman labs, they were talking about exactly that. The testosterone, aside from, however, the biochemical things that are going on in your body, it also it tells your brain. I guess it entices your brain into wanting to do more, wanting to lift more, wanting to walk further, or run further, and becoming stronger. That's an interesting concept. That's not is it medical? Is it biochemical?
It's really not medical. In other words, there's no receptors in your brain that the testosterone affects that are called the pleasure or enjoyment, receptors. So when you exercise or whatever. So I think what that is, though, there are receptors that involve, motivation. It affects the neuronal circuits for motivation. It affects the neuronal circuits for your sort of reward system, your emotional processing, your sense of well-being. Subjectively, when you put an effort forth, like lifting a certain amount of weights, you are more motivated to lift more weights the next time potentially, or, do more sets or something along those lines. So basically it does affect you in a sort of, I guess it's a halo effect, if you will, and it's very synergistic. And getting you to the gym was really important for your health, but you can see why it kind of motivated you in a lot of other ways too.
Let's see if we have a real quick one, Ben. I know which one I'm looking for, but let's see what's loaded up next.
The major mental effect of testosterone is it makes effort feel good.
Oh, that makes sense.
And the reason it does it is that the amygdala, this fear center in the brain, this anxiety center in the brain, has androgen receptors. It has testosterone receptors. And so effort and leaning into pain and challenge actually has the effect of making the body feel soothed and good. It's a drive. Just like sex is a drive, or drinking water when you're thirsty is a drive. This stuff is all anchored deep within the hypothalamus. This isn't a cognitive thing.
Yeah, so that's it. That's the one I was thinking about. But along the lines of what you said, or I mentioned to you, Doc, testosterone, I don't know, tricks your brain into wanting to do more. You want to succeed. So quick thought on that, and then I have one final topic I want to talk to you about.
Well, Dr. Huberman's right. I mean, there are actually testosterone receptors in the amygdala, the part of the brain that he's talking about. And I think he and I sort of agree on that statement, which is essentially that although the testosterone doesn't, cause you to enjoy that exercise more, it makes it so the exercise is more enjoyable. You are making gains, you feel better, you feel stronger. So it's that sort of halo effect. And I agree with him. I think it's exactly what we're talking about.
All right, then very quickly, this one, I don't know. I started it, I talked to you about it. I love it. Creatine. Tell us about creatine, what it is, what we thought it was, what we now know it is, and risks, dangers, myths, and positive outcomes.
Yeah. Well, creatine is, again, one of those things that's all over the internet, and many patients ask me on a weekly basis. So there have been some recent studies about creatine in terms of decreasing the risk of cognitive decline, and that's why it's sort of reared up again recently in terms of public interest. There were some prior studies, and it's always been a thing that's been used around the gyms to improve muscle mass. It's very well studied, and there are some absolute proven benefits, especially with resistance type training and anaerobic type training. People increase their strength, their power output, their strength production, their muscle size. In terms of some of the more recent studies with preventing cognitive decline and things, they're a little less clear. But I think this is one of those areas, Eric, where you kind of make a judgment and it's sort of a risk-benefit analysis. And assuming you have normal kidney function and normal, you're healthy otherwise, and your doctor says you can use creatine, then it's generally speaking very, very safe. So using the creatine can definitely be beneficial.
How often do we have to check the blood for things like this? You're checking kidney functions. I mean,
I check between 3 and 6 months, depending. That's my standard, depending on what we're looking at. If we made a bunch of changes or something in you, we might check you in 3 months later. If I didn't make any changes and your blood looked good, we might wait, 6 months. But it sort of depends on the number of changes you're making with lifestyle, nutrition, medicine changes, supplement changes, and all of those sorts of things. I think one of the things, and I have a patient in my practice now with a couple of patients with neurodegenerative disorders, and I think creatine has been sort of touted as a benefit in people who have like Parkinson's disease, for example, or multiple sclerosis, or ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, or something like that. And there really is not any, again, I would say if you have one of those things, why wouldn't you try it if it's safe for you? But there's not a lot of studies or a lot of science behind that. And there's many, many, many reviews. People were sort of looking to see if creatine could help in the neurodegenerative part. And, again, if there's a small benefit in memory and cognitive performance, there are some studies that show that. It might be worth trying. So some of these things you really talk to your doctor about, and you really do a cost-benefit analysis.
Well, let's do this very quickly. It should have come on the bottle, the creatine bottle. There is one side effect, one drawback, and I called you about it immediately. The first few days of taking creatine, I had lost 25 pounds. I was feeling great. I was at the lowest weight I've been since college. Started creatine. Within 2 or 3 days, I had gained 7 pounds. I said, Doc, what the hell is happening? Tell me what happened.
Yeah, that's usually water weight. So one of the ways that creatine works is it helps you bring water into your cells, and specifically your muscle cells. So that is not super uncommon. Yours is a little more weight than I expect sometimes on the dose of creatine that you're on. But having said that, it usually just goes away if you hang in there, or sometimes we have to help it with a little bit of medicine.
I don't want to help it with medicine, but it hasn't gone away yet. All right, Dr. Todd Dorfman. He's my personal doctor. He's a concierge doctor. He's the CEO and founder of Sedalian Health. Great doctor, and really good talking to you. Very quickly, to get the edge, if you had a guy come in and say, I need the edge, I'm an athlete, or I'm on Wall Street, or I'm on television, I need the edge. What's the one thing you recommend?
Yeah, it's the one thing I recommend is it's not a one-size-fits-all. We got to do blood work, and you got to see what's going to give that individual person the edge. And I think that's really what it's about.
All right, we're going to leave right there. Dr. Todd Dorfman, thank you so much.
Great to have you. Great to talk to you. You look great, Eric. Talk to you soon.
That's your fault. Thank you, Doc.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So I play pro ball. I traded under insane pressure on Wall Street. I'm on TV every single day. I've tested myself against the fires, all of them. And like you, I want to know what actually works for men pushing the limits. Now, what's the one hack you've tried or you've thought about trying? Let us know. Comment below. And by the way, don't forget, subscribe to The Edge to get your edge.